Alright guys, it's a pirate's life for me, and today we are back with a showdown between the Vampire Coast, who shall be led by Count Noctilus, and he will indeed be on his scratching post, which is the Necrofex Colossus. We're going to be facing off against the Dark Elves, who are going to be led by a very unusual pick in Crone Hellebron. So on that note guys, let's jump right into this match and have some fun. So as far as the build goes, this is going to be the build that is pretty much my dedicated Dark Elf build. I've had really good success with it, and I think it's incredibly powerful. So in the front line, we have a main core of the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs, pretty much the standard stuff for most matchups. These guys pretty good, 300 gold. They're able to hold their own against like Bleak Swords and Dread Spears, and obviously they will inevitably lose most of those matchups, but 8,640 HP is a lot to work through, and honestly 29 weapon strength is pretty damn good for something that's this cheap and also unbreakable. So front line's going to be Deckhand mobs. In the secondary line, so we have a lot of layers. Typically the Vampire Coast is going to be played somewhat in a very similar fashion to the Dawi. You want spread apart formations. You want, if one part of your area is compromised, so for example if my opponent gets on the deck gunners, or if he's able to get on top of the gunnery mobs, you want them to be taking fire from somewhere else. You don't want your stuff very tightly packed in a very narrow line, because then everything's going to be compromised for the price of one. So we do have two groups of the gunnery mobs, so these are just the pistol variants. I put them up and in between the deckhand mobs. These guys are really good against lightly armored troops. Even if they have shields, it's just a volume of fire thing, so you wear down Sisters of Slaughter, Witch Elves, Bleak Swords, Dread Spears. It does some decent damage, and if they have like Harpies or Skirmishers, these guys can also shoot them a little bit. Noctilus on the Steed, I don't think this is the most competitive way to use him. I think on foot he's a little bit tougher to kill, but having the Colossus is just super strong if they do not bring bolt throwers. So one of the things I have been facing off when I play Vampire Coast against Dark Elves is sometimes you'll see someone bring like 3 or 4 bolt throwers and they just sit on Noctilus the entire time, and from there you kind of have to fall back or hide in the trees, and it can be pretty trying. But if you bring Noctilus on foot, you don't really have to worry about that. But if your opponent does not bring the bolt throwers, you're really going to be happy you have him on the Noctilus, or the Noctilus Steed, the Colossus. On top of that, we do also have two groups of the Zombie Pirate Gunnery mobs with handguns, and these guys are just very, very solid. Incredible range at 145, and I think Dark Shards have 125, so they're going to be able to outrange them a little bit. Granted, Dark Shards do have the silver shields, but really they're just good against infantry. So Corsairs, they can shoot at any monsters, and they can put Withering Fire on cav units and Sisters of Slaughter and enemy lords. I don't think going like super heavy duty in this matchup with them is like super powerful, but I think having a couple groups is very, very good. So in total we have 2. I think we do have the black spot somewhere, so we do have the gunnery mob here, and then also the black spot, which is a must bring. Very good at kind of dealing with skirmish, right? So if they come in with like Dark Riders or Harpies or things like that, these guys have pretty good combat stats. 1817 charge defense against large, and anti-large and armor piercing and melee. Can't complain about that. Now these guys, in my opinion, are the MVPs of this matchup. Now these are Depth Guard. Depth Guard pretty much beat down all of the Dark Elf infantry with the exception of the Hargoneth Executioners and the Black Guard, but nobody's going to bring big, expensive, heavy infantry against a gun faction like this. So the Depth Guard are just so damn safe in this matchup. They kill all the Dark Elf infantry, and I mean, they beat the brakes off Sisters of Slaughter, which is great. They also just mulch through the Bleak Swords without taking barely any damage. Dark Elves can do a really good job focusing these guys down using like Shades or Dark Shards or things like that, but if you're able to keep them in the back and wait for the late game to push them in, these guys can do so much work. On top of that, we have two groups of the deck gunners. Deck gunners are just a useful kind of long-range tool for sniping casters, going after big armored targets. I just like deck gunners quite a bit in this matchup, not in everyone, but that's going to be it for the main core. On the flanks, we have a couple halberds, and of course, no army is complete without a couple scurvy dogs. We've got 2 scurvy dogs going to be trying to get into the back line, 2 groups of fellbats, and that is it. And for the armies of Aerocrastic in the front line is a combination of the Dread Spears and the Blackheart Corsairs. Blackheart Corsairs are very good at lawn mowing through the infantry. They have a bonus for infantry, high combat stats, are pretty durable with 80 armor themselves, so they're barely going to take any damage from deckhand mobs. The one thing they have to watch out for, of course, is the Depth Guard, but for the most part, a beautiful pick here from Aerocrastic. He does have the Canade Assassin as well. Canade Assassin is going to be able to get in there, and let's see what I think he has the trophy head, so maybe he's going to be trying to assassinate Noctilus. Now, if Noctilus was on foot, I'd have to be very, very respectful of this guy, because him and Crone Hellebron could just hunt him down. But yeah, trophy heads, and then he does also have Web of Shadows, which is pretty good. It's like a mini AoE damage spell and also slows. He's got a Firecaster to shoot fireballs at Noctilus and other targets, which is very good. And Crone Hellebron, who does have the Gaze, which is going to make his infantry much stronger. The Blackheart Corsairs and other troops could just annihilate my front line, potentially. On top of that, he's got some Cold One Spear Riders, Dark Riders here in the back. And yeah, the Spear Riders, if I did go like crab heavy, it would be very nice to have these. And nonetheless, if he's able to get on Noctilus or use their AP against Depth Guard, they could serve a multitude of purposes. Dark Riders over here on the flank, Sisters of Slaughter on the far side, who are going to be a pretty big target for me. And that is it. So on that note, guys, let's see how this battle goes. So up here in the skies, you can see the bats are going to be swooping overhead, looking for some targets. Noctilus taking a couple pot shots here at the Cold One Knights, and it looks like he is able to kill 3 models there. And initially, I'm going to be sending in some of the fellbats because I wanted to halt his advance. I do have long-range tools, and I don't mind sacrificing 350 gold to kind of pull a lot of his resources over here. So instead of positioning around my army, these Dark Riders are now dealing with fellbats. which is good. I'm going to get more fire. It allows me to kind of deploy a little bit better, and I think it's worth it. The first of the Roth's Moondal is going to be going down, so Noctilus is going to be dropping some summons, and anytime you can kind of put a roadblock in front of their advancing army, it's very good, because some of the troops will engage, some of them will be falling back, but of course Aerocrastic, being a very seasoned veteran, is going to be repositioning here and making sure that his army engages as one and does not trickle in. But the Deck Gunners are going downtown, and it's so awesome seeing the Vampire Coast just gun lines go off. It's just such a good faction. Anyways, over here, Scurvy Dogs are going to be, creeping in the back, but I'm playing a very patient game. I'm just keeping the Scurvy Dogs on the flanks, just waiting for things to kind of get a little bit closer and waiting for him to commit more resources to the front line before I get to take that natural engagement in the back. Some of the deckhand mobs aren't being attacked by his cav units, so they should be able to kind of, kill my zombies pretty quick there. And the deckhand mobs have engaged with the Corsairs in the front, doing a little bit of damage in return, but the Corsairs, for the most part, are going to be able to cut those guys up. Noctilus, I put him in a bit of a dangerous position, but knowing that, these Dark Shards are a little bit pressured by the dogs here, I don't mind walking up here with Noctilus just to get a summon off. So the Zombie Pirate Deckhand summon is going to be dropped on top of those Dark Shards, and I should get some pretty good value. And it looks like there's going to be some sort of a Flamestorm going down back here. So it's going to be dropped on top of the gunnery mobs with handguns, and it does a little bit of value. I think it's about like 20% off those guys, but certainly not the best situation. Those Vortex spells are just, generally kind of weak unless it's like a very, very, very tight mob. Anyways, up here in the front, the Gaze of Cain has gone down from the Crone Hellebron. It's going to make these Blackheart Corsairs pretty nasty. 59, 60 kills. They're just climbing up, just rapid fire here, and the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs in the front are certainly faltering. Balance Bar is pretty much, even at this point, no one's really pulled ahead. But we do isolate the Cold One Knights. So the Cold One Knights right here, pretty open field. You can see some of the Deck Gunners and my handgun mobs are just going to be teeing off on those guys. So the Cold One Knights are getting taken out pretty bad, and some of the dogs do swoop into the back line. So I'm able to get a jump on 2 of the Dark Shards now. Very cool play by Aerocrastic. He keeps the K8 Assassin back here for the net to kind of net these guys down, do AoE damage, and he gets a massive collapse with the Dark Riders and some of his other troops. Now, I don't mind that because I got a lot of damage on those Dark Shards, almost neutralized them, and the other dogs are just going to be waiting in the back for some opportunities to free up. So it's really important to be patient with your Scurvy Dogs. Back in the day, I used to be very kind of hasty. I'd rush in and just think that getting the initial jump was super important, but really just wait and be patient. Just kind of lurk on the wings. Something will eventually open up, because as someone loses things in the front line, often they commit more, etc., etc. So the Sorcerers with Fire was a pretty open field target, so I get all my Deck Gunners who are actually surprisingly good at killing characters, and the Sorcerers right here is going to be getting popped by 2 groups of Deck Gunners, definitely taking quite a bit of damage. And Aerocrastic does get some Dread Spears into my back line, but I had some Halberds back there to kind of defend, and also a summoned group of zombies, so I should be able to tar pit those guys and eventually drag them down. Zombie Pirate Gunnery mobs with the handguns here in the front have been compromised, so Aerocrastic does a very good job of killing them with the Blackheart Corsairs, but at the cost of the Caster. So the Caster has fallen here, going to be taking some fat cannonballs to the face, negative. Oh my god, didn't even get to shatter. She just got taken out by the firepower of Noctilus and the Deckhand Gunners. So for the most part, my backline is somewhat intact. My black spot has fallen back here. I've now kind of secured that position. Some of the Deck Gunners are going to start taking some Dark Shard fire, and you can see my Hounds on the flank still causing some problems, but now these Dark Riders and these other troops are going to be committing to the main fight. And this is the moment I'm talking about. You play very patiently. The dogs are coming in, and they might be able to just feast for free on some of these troops. The Death Guard have won their fights pretty hands down. They're able to kind of kill everything in the wings, and they're just kind of pushing inward now. So these Death Guard cleaving these Dark Riders asunder, doing a very, very good job there. And the other ones on the other side, the Sisters of Slaughter get annihilated to the last. I mean, the Death Guard did have some help, but just that is such value. I mean, killing those Sisters of Slaughter is 1,100 gold. Death Guard are just such beasts. Again, but you do have to keep them out of range of the the focus fire and the Dark Shards and things like that. So dogs are coming to the back line. Noctilus does get a summon here. Some of the spears coming in as well, but I don't mind committing here. They're very, very beat up, so I'm like, okay, if I can get in and kind of chew these guys up, they're going to break. Noctilus is relatively close as well, and there's not too many threats to him right here. You can see the Dark Shards, which are the counter to him. I could potentially push in, and you can see Crone Hellebron. Of course, Footlords are very tough to shoot down with guns, so there is a very competitive element to bringing a Footlord against the Vampire Coast, but I don't have to respect it too much because Noctilus is just so much faster. 45 speed, well, I guess he's not that much, but 44, so I should be able to at least run from the Crone Hellebron, use my high mass to push through my own halberds, and eventually get to a relatively safe position. Now, the bounce power has gone in my favor here, and some of the Depth Guard on the wings, like I said, are collapsing inward. 62 kills on these ones, 115 on those other Depth Guard, and they're pretty much unhurt, so they're just going to have an easy time killing these Bleak Swords and some of these other troops here. And the Dark Elves, aside from Dark Shards, and maybe Crone Hellebron is actually quite good against infantry, has a really good AP right here, and you can see just massive stats, and she does have that AoE and the Cursed Blade, so that is going to be doing some good damage to the Depth Guard. Apart from here, we're going to be kind of charging forth with the Deckhand mobs with polearms and one of my last summons here. I think I have one more after this. And the Depth Guard are going to be just going full-on Berserker here into the back of these guys and should be able to do some pretty huge damage. So Depth Guard going to be cleaving the Bleak Swords, and yeah, you can see they're going to start taking some huge damage. I do also drop a Wraithstorm back here to make sure I can finish off the Dark Shards, and the Dark Shards have been finished off with the dogs. So pretty much like a good 40-50% of my micro in this game was really allocated to using the dogs and the bats in the back line. Well, not the bats so much, but more the dogs, to just make sure I could finish off the Dark Shards. And that's kind of a general theory about most games. If you have like a really big powerhouse unit, right, like Count Noctilus on a Necrofex Colossus, or a monsters unit, let's say like a Crab, or if you're playing an Arachnarch Spider with the greenskins, you want to immediately look at your opponent's army and be like, okay, what is the answer to this big mega heavy threat? It's monster like you're like playing 40k, so if I'm using Mortarion in my 40k list, my opponent has some mega heavy guns on the other side, let's say it's like quad las cannons or something that's going to do a ton of wounds to a big target. You always want to like really hyper focus on killing those elements, because it's then going to free up a character like this just to run shop. And you can see here that's kind of been the case. Noctilus is relatively safe. The Dark Shards are just compromised. The dogs are just feasting on their souls in the back. And the units that are left, the Assassin plus Helibron could do a lot of damage to them, but I have a ton of Depth Guard left. And the Depth Guard are just kind of, just holding these guys back, doing good damage against the Assassin. And from there, I could probably pull in Noctilus for a rear charge, which will probably break the leadership of all these troops right here. And the Noctilus does, of course, cause terror. So you can see some of these troops are going to be shattering off right here. Crone Helibron doing a good job. And as far as kills, she is up to 99, 103. Her AoE doing a ton of damage. And one of the things that could potentially get him back in the game, the Gaze of Cain has been dropped here to buff up these troops. So with Noctilus coming in, most of these low tier troops like the Dread Spears and some of the Corsairs, I guess, are a little bit more stalwart, but they're not going to be able to do much. So Noctilus is going to be stomping in with his mean old peg leg, dropping the Thunder here on the Cainate Assassin, able to kind of burn him off. And you can see Crone Helibron is going to fall shortly after. So well played to my opponent. It's a pretty tough. I guess it's a bit of a what is the term I'm looking for? So not like cat and mouse, but there is an element like if he does bring the Reaper Bolt Throws, I think that would have been pretty disastrous. Granted, I didn't have any other good targets for the Reaper Bolt Thrower, so I could have probably stayed back a little bit further and stayed out of range. But this Dark Elf build I've been using, or this Vampire Coast build against Dark Elves, is just so damn powerful. I can't remember the last time I've lost with it against Dark Elves, and I played a lot of great tournament players and gentlemen like Theorycrafting here, and it is very, very strong for sure. But I'm trying to think what would be the most efficient way to kind of take it out. It's just so tough. I mean, I think that Noctilus probably could use a couple nerfs on his summons. It really is a pretty big, crutch in that respect. Maybe just taking like one charge off the Moon Dials, just so it's like a single charge, and then making it so his Drowned Dead has like one less charge or something, or costs a little bit more Winds of Magic could be pretty good. But nonetheless, I mean, I still think that there's plenty of ways to kind of take him out. I have seen people use Shades pretty effectively, because the Shades do have stock, therefore I'm not going to be able to shoot them on the approach. And on top of that, they're able to kill dogs a little bit better in melee combat and are more durable against that, but they're so expensive too. So it's tough to kind of. We'll do some theory crafting, but yeah, so just kind of theory crafting with this build in mind. But zombies do a really good job. Depth Guard do a great job against Dark Elves. They're just so efficient. And Deck Hunters did good. And yeah, the doggos were just happy little pups doing their thing, just cackling and yipping and yelling and having a good time. But yeah, obviously I think that he was using a bit of an experimental build. I don't think he was using like a standard tournament build, so I wouldn't really put much credence into that. I think there's probably some like standard Dark Elf tournament builds that might be able to just like take out this build or contest with it very, very well. But Theorycrafting, if you are indeed watching, let us know. Like what would you bring if you were in like a tournament? Because obviously you were experimenting with like Flamestorm and a couple other things. Crone Helibron, of course, very unorthodox. If you were in a tournament, what would you use against like a Vampire Coast build? Well, you wouldn't know the build, but what would you generally bring against Vampire Coast? And we'll go ahead and do a bit of a breakdown here and see what I could maybe theorycraft. So very well played. And also, guys, Theorycrafting does indeed have a YouTube channel. So there will be a link in the comment section below. Make sure to check them out. And on that note, well played. And let's go do some theorycrafting. Oh, man, my throat is... Milk is a bad choice. My throat is so damn dry. Etiquette, I'm too weak. All right, so let's go to Dark Elves here. Yeah, it's just like allergy season out here. It's horrible. Now, there's a couple theories. You could go really cheap and use like this guy, like get a Dreadlord like with a crossbow. That could be pretty good. Just like sit him on Noctilus the entire game and he costs like nothing, right? You could put him on foot if you do want to go with the Footlord, Volley of Arrows. Now, I'm trying to think of the other characters. Marathi could be pretty good. Anti-large, Armor Piercing. Malekith could be good for clearing out chaff. But let's just experiment. Let's theorycraft a little bit. This guy's just going to be sitting. Extra armor piercing damage from the Guided Eye seems pretty good. And the Pearl of Infinite Darkness, I don't think we need that. So that's a pretty good little kit there. I do like Fire. I think Fire is pretty good. Getting the good old Fireball, just kind of training it on Noctilus the entire time can be very punishing. It's good against other targets as well. Flaming Sword of Ruin gives you a little bit more burst. But let's get the Burning Head. Cascading Fire Cloak, I don't know if we need. These are expensive spells though. Yeah, I think these three could be decent. And that'll be good from there. Now for the front line, I think having Dread Spears are pretty good, because if they do go with Crabs or Morngulls, they're going to be much tougher. So I think having a combination of Corsairs and Dread Spears is going to be the way to go. And so let's go ahead and get you guys. We'll get a couple of them. We'll get some Corsairs as well. And go like very wide for sure. I think we need to like just, I mean, I know I say that in every video, but I think in this case especially, we get a couple Bleak Swords and they can actually fight in the inner pocket. So the Bleak Swords, but we need some answers against the Shades. The Shades are really nasty for sure. Not Shades, excuse me, the Berserkers, the Death Guard. So we'll get some of the swords and they can fight in the inner pocket. The Spears will be a little bit more positioned out in the flank. So again, it's very, very wide force. Now, a couple Dark Riders with shields. These guys are going to be on like Hound duty. So if the opponent comes in with like a couple scurvy dogs like I did, for example, just use the hounds to kind of fend those guys off. Now we have to also respect the crabby play. Do we want to get Dark Riders with repeater crossbows? I don't think so, because deck gunners and some of the other tools and Noctilus will be able to pop them off pretty efficiently. Could get a couple of Harpies, actually. Harpies might not be a bad choice at just harassing and dealing with Fellbats and whatnot. No monsters. I don't think that's really going to be terribly efficient. And let's mix in a couple Shades. You could get the dual wielding variant, because it's only 100 more, and they're also bonus for infantry, so they'll kill dogs and like chaff like almost instantly. Do we want to do that? This is like, that would be like a first. We're theory crafting. Let's just mess around with it a little bit. So I think we cut these guys. I think that's a good and wide enough front line that opens up a little bit more money for us. Now, as far as other cav units, Slaanesha's Harvester is pretty expensive. I don't like to give the Vampire Coast anything to like really focus us down. So we could bring a couple of these. Reaper Bolt Throwers are going to be able to pretty efficiently snipe out like big characters, and they also give you some extra AP against crabs. And we need something to kind of protect the back line a little bit, so we could get some of the Helibroni. Yeah, I'd be interested to see how something like this would go. You know, the Shades give you extra armor piercing, but Depth Guard are just going to be so gross. And the Shades are really going to have their like work like cut out for them. They're going to have to do a ton. So maybe just going with like more archers. I mean, we could cut into the front line a little bit. Just go something like this. Corsairs in the middle. That is a pretty thin front line, but it does open up some other options. So we could get Dark Shards with shields at this point. We're going to have to cut one more unit. And I guess maybe we just go down to the regular Shades. I don't think you really need the dual weapons. And that's going to leave us with 14 gold. And from here, Volley of Arrows. I don't know how good that ability is. This one does give reload skill to nearby units. So you could kind of put them with the Shades or the Dark Shards, and I think they could be pretty good. Kindle Flame will be relatively useful. Flaming Sword of Ruin, not going to be that great. So maybe we just cut that and get the Fireball and just make sure it's like a super efficient like magic play. Okay, my one concern though is Harpies. Harpies you could actually use to like rear charge like deckhand mobs when they're fighting Corsairs and kill them pretty quick. They can get in the back line, disrupt cannons. You have the Dark Shards, which are going to be a natural threat, Silver Shield, so they're going to draw some fire. Shades will be able to shoot down the Depth Guard potentially. It's a little bit micro-intensive, but I don't know. Something like this maybe could work, but I'll have to think about it. So anyways, very well played to my opponent. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the theory crafting. Give this build a try against Vampire Coast. Sit the Dreadlord on top of Noctilus or any other big threats and see what happens. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys.